Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rise with Sarah Sincotta. I am your host, Sarah. Today, we have a special treat for you and welcoming the amazing human, Matt Scafidi, who is a director of a bird advocacy group. He's also a coach and an amazing human. Thank you and welcome, Matt, for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me, Sarah. I appreciate it. What an intro. Hard to go from there. But anyway, there you go. Thank you.
Super excited to have you on, Matt, and what a wealth of knowledge and wisdom that you have and what you will bring to this session today. And for those tuning in, we're going to be talking about today on high performing agents and the skill sets and the things that shape us being a high performing agent. And Matt, you do have quite a story to tell. But before we get into your journey, for those watching and listening who don't know who Matt is, who is Matt?
Who's Matt? Matt's a husband. He's a dad. Two beautiful girls, Adley and Cara. As I was just saying off air, my oldest daughter, has just bought a car, so we're picking that up tomorrow. So that's very, very exciting. I'm a person that loves holidays with the family. We love going to Noosa. We're heading there next week, actually, and really looking forward to that. And I've got my home gym, which I love as well, and my wife and daughter both train in there as well. And I'm a massive Batman fan and a long, tragic, suffering Essendon fan as well. So yeah, keeps me busy.
I love that. And look, we're based in Vic. For those, I actually don't think I've said this on air before, but I am a Collingwood supporter. I was pretty happy with how we went last year. I know I'm
yes, well, I'm sure you're going to mention it now after the premiership. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, Matt, I want to start with your journey because it's pretty impressive. Because you started we know that you have been a real estate agent before and now you've taken it a different direction. So can you tell us a bit about your journey? Because I know that you were actually recognized as in the top 100 in Victoria as real estate agents, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, listen, it's the top 100 is a bit funny. It's just depends who nominates each year, of course, but it's a nice accolade to get, of course. But my journey started at 36, so I was a bit late into the industry. But prior to that, I was a packaging sales rep and used to deal with a lot of wineries and beverage companies, etc., with their packaging and boxes. The thing that I always harbored was to want to get into real estate. And I actually did my real estate course 5 years prior to actually getting into it. Just over 5 years, actually, because it lapsed, so I had to do it all again. I attribute, and anyone that's heard me speak before will know that I attribute the ability to get into real estate to my lovely wife, Tanya, who basically said to me, get this out of your system, either get it done and do it well, or it's back to selling boxes and a regular paycheck and company car and all that sort of thing. So the thing that I noticed, though, when I came over was how many people in the industry were just sort of winging it, and people's biggest asset in the world. And it was strange. It was like I came from an industry where if you produce 200,000 boxes for a particular company, you get the print wrong, you get the size wrong, you get the cardboard wrong, then those boxes are useless to anyone else in the world. So no one else on the planet needs them, and they just go back into pulp, and it's a massive loss to the business. And selling someone's biggest asset, I brought those processes and systems into doing that. And anyone that knows me and's worked with me knows that I love a process and I love my systems. And Josh Fegan, has always said that every problem is either stems from a person or it stems from a process. So not being done correctly. So that I brought over, but 36, a bit of a late starter, but I had no plan B, and I just had to hit the ground running. And had a really, really good first year, an exceptional second year in real estate, and that just sort of snowballed from there. But it was, I suppose, the old adage, Tom Panos says it all the time: get in earlier, stay later. And it's not how good you are; it's you've just got to be there. And if you get that opportunity, you need to put your best foot forward and be able to sell your value to potential vendors, and that's what I did, and had great time doing that. That 15 years I was in that space, and it brought me a hell of a lot of things that I would never have got if I wasn't in real estate, and and that's I'm forever grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. A couple of things that you said there, Matt. One of the ones was that your wife inspired you. And one of the things that I like to train for people is to reflect and why we got into real estate. Who are the people that inspire us? I remember when I first started, my ex at the time, my ex partner, actually was the one who gave me that nudge and was like, I think you'd be really good at this. And
Yeah.
perhaps if I hadn't have got that nudge, maybe I wouldn't have pursued that career path. And there's also people like my mum, who is my biggest inspiration, and she embodied hard work and really the relationship side, which is so important in real estate. The other things you mentioned, Matt, is systems and processes. I think that's what we've both got in common. I think we need that great system and those processes in place so that we know if you follow that process, you get the results. But what I would love to dive in deeper a bit, Matt, is why do you think that you were so successful during that period of time? What if you could look at, let's break it down.
Yeah.
What were the things you did that made you successful?
I think a lot of people, Sarah, get into real estate and they think it's one thing, and it couldn't be further from the truth. You get into real estate, you've got to learn real estate and how that works and how that functions, but you've also got to learn selling as well. I had the benefit of having 14 years of sales experience coming in, so I just basically turned what I learned from selling boxes into selling homes. And actually, my packaging boss that I had, that I left to go into real estate, actually said to me, he said, "Well, mate, you're really still selling boxes. They're just a bit bigger." And I said, "Yeah, exactly." And they got a roof on and everything else. But the funny thing is that I had that sales experience, and I always tell people that later in life when I was hiring and all those sort of things, that if you don't have that sales experience, you're going to have to learn to sell, and you're going to have to learn real estate at the same time. And that's why it's extremely difficult for somebody to get a start really, really quickly. So what I did was I burned the boats pretty much at the end of the day. And I said, there's no plan B. I'm not going back to selling boxes. My wife had just had our second daughter, and we were building a house and we were renting, and I was going into real estate. I'd just given up a job with, a set income and, and cars and everything else. But, I had no other choice. So I had to get to work earlier, stay later, work harder than everybody else. And for me, it was about connecting with people. And once I connected with people, I just went through and I said, right, who do I know? I put my wife's best friend on my database. I put her mum on the database, put my mum on the database. And a couple of those people sort of said to me, "Why am I on your database? I don't live in your area," and everything else. And I said, "Listen, it's just one of those things that I just want to keep people up to date with what I'm doing." So when you're at a barbecue, you're at somewhere, and someone says something about real estate, you can actually go, "Actually, Matthew does that." So anyway, those three people I just mentioned, I sold homes for. Sold for my mum, sold for my in-laws, sold for my wife's best friend. And that happened over time. It didn't happen immediately, but they were on my database from day one. And database, and anyone that's done my coaching knows that the database is your superannuation fund in real estate. It is simply, and it's not just people that can potentially sell homes or whatever. It's people like yourself. It's contacts within the industry as well. And you've got to be open to that networking. And a lot of people aren't, especially I find this generation coming through. They find it really weird and a bit awkward to network. And I can say I went to a function probably about 6 months ago, and it was something I didn't really want to go to, but I thought, no, it wasn't one of your events. It's okay. But no, I had a lot on and everything else, but I thought, no, I'm going to push myself, going to go. And my business partner, Dion, I said, are you going to come along? And he said, no, I've got the wedding coming up and everything else. And I said, okay, no problem. But I went anyway. I had a flat tire on the way there. So I had to get RSCV out and get all that sorted. And then on the road again, got there. And long story short, person I connected with that night, I've had, I think, up to 5 referrals from now. And that's another advocate in our space, but she doesn't work in my area. So all of a sudden, I've got those 5 referrals. And that's what I did early on. Whatever I needed to do, if I needed to do a charity auction, if I sponsor the local bowling club, whatever it was, I would do to make myself known, because that's the only way that you can actually get business. We're in a very unique business in real estate where we know where every single one of our clients actually live. We might not know them personally, but we know where they live.
Yeah.
So it's a way where you can prospect. So I prospected really, really hard. I got up at 5 every morning for probably about 6 months. I dropped letterboxes in my BDA area, and that's another thing I always say to people I'm coaching. It's database and it's a business development area, and you've got to focus on it, because the scattergun approach just doesn't work, especially in today with social media and everything else. You can't be everything to everyone, and unfortunately, not everyone's going to like it. And it took me a while to get through that, because most people in real estate, we all have this innate need to be liked. But once you get over that and you move past that, it allows you to be able to grow momentum really, really quickly. And I took the Mitcham area that I was focused on, which I picked simply because I was living there and nobody else had done any business in that area the year before. So I wasn't going to upset anyone in my office. I just focused on that area, and that's all I did. And I just would move from one end to the other and just drop letterboxes. And it used to be on the photocopier when the boss was out, and just used to photocopy. And then later on, when you start to get a little bit of traction, it was printed professionally. And then later on, it was dropped professionally as well. But you've got to do the hard yards early. And that's the thing where I think a lot of people do miss the point. My wife and I spent a lot of hours in front of TVs early on, stuffing envelopes and doing all those things as well. So I always believe in prospecting. Don't ask anybody else to do something you haven't done yourself first.
Yeah. I love that. I'm a massive believer of connections. And there was a couple of things there, Matt, that you said that I want to address, and that's the new generation coming into the real estate agency now, where I think, technology and social media has played a big part in when we look at psychology of the new generation coming. Also, you can have quick wins, right? But we know in real estate, it's a long-term game, and you need to be prepared to work hard, develop your skills, really connect with people, and get out of your comfort zone, right? To do these things, because they are the things eventually that will get you the results, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you touched on that. And database. The story for me, Matt, is when I was a business development manager and property management, I actually had a post that I pinned on my personal Facebook page that said, "Friends and family, do you know what I do?" And I went into what I did and how I can help investors and renters. Because if we look at our immediate network, if our friends and family don't even know what we do and how we help people, and we're going out and actually trying to form connections with people that don't even know us, well, you're missing out on an opportunity just there. which from your story, Matt, like you had the opportunity to sell properties for people that you have in your immediate network. It was the same with my friends. Like I was fortunate enough to manage their properties simply because they knew what I did and the trust was already there. So
Yeah.
it's because people always go, new in the industry, I don't have a database. Well, start with the people that you do know, the people that trust you, and you just never know what will come out from just having those conversations and asking the question, do you know anyone that needs this service or that needs this help? Right. So I loved that. And I love that we've both got stories to share on that. And I think going back, there's just not one thing. I like to say we have an ecosystem. Whether you're a sales agent or a BDM or a business owner, like we're both business owners, Matt, is we have an ecosystem. There's different things that we need to do all the time that contribute to our success and to be high performing at what we do. So I love that you mentioned that. So let's look at the traits then of what you think high performing agents will have.
I watched a TED talk a couple of years ago. Brené Brown, I believe her name is, and it was basically about grit. Now, what is grit? Grit can be defined as a lot of things, but I think that you've got to have the ability not only to have a good work ethic, to work hard, to get in early, stay late, all those things, but you've also got to be structured. So you've got to have a plan. There's no point in just coming in and scattergun approach and doing 100 things, but not doing them in the right order, for example, as well. So you've got to have a plan. So you need to sit down and need to say, right, what does the next 12 months look like? What does it look like being on Matt or Sarah's database? So I would always put myself on my database, right? You probably did the same thing because I wanted to see what it was like to be on my database. Was it too much? Was it too little? Was it good quality? Was it bad quality? All those sort of things. Because I agree with you, you've always got to be reminding people what it is that you do. Now I'm a buyer's advocate. I've got to explain all the time what it is that I do. And that's what I'm in my social media posts and everything else. It's all about education. I don't share anymore what we bought a property for or how many thousands of dollars we saved our client or any of those sort of things. Addresses we don't use, just suburbs. That's all we use going forward. But it's all about education. But coming back to what makes a really high performing agent, it's to have a plan, it's to follow that plan through and to give it enough time to actually work. I've seen so many agents come and go from the industry that have just been so close. You know that comic strip where the guy's mining and he's got the pick and he's come like this far and he's got like this far to go and then there's all the diamonds on the other side and he gives up and goes home. That's what so many agents do because the minute they leave, all of a sudden phone-ins start to come into the office for them and everything else. And the fruit was low hanging at that time and it was ready to be picked. But they left at the wrong time because they gave up. And so I think that you've got to have grit, but you've also got to hate losing. You like I love winning, but I hate losing more than winning. Like I just hate to lose. I hate to lose in sport. I hate to lose at life. I hate to lose at work. So I think that you've got to have that as well. And I think that you become a better human along the journey and along the path. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've never been self-absorbed and selfish and have just thought about myself solely. There's a gentleman that I've got a lot of respect for that was a business partner of mine that taught me when I started working with him to stop using the word I and to start using the word we and us and ours. And it was really, really hard to move out of that. But eventually I got there and, it's now, when you're dealing with clients, when you can say we believe, it's so much more powerful than saying I believe. And, I think that that's it. If you've got grit, if you've got determination and you hate to lose, you've got a good solid plan, and you can innovate as well. So you've got to be able to put things to innovate and implement, because so many people go away to ARIC and to other courses, and I see them, they write copious amounts of notes, and you just look at them and think that's never going to actually transpire to happen in your business. I used to go to ARIC and I used to have 5 things, and they used to shuffle around over the course of the couple of days. But there was 5 things I would take away and say, I'm going to implement this in my business. And that's what I did every single year. And I figured that if I implemented 5 new things every year that was going to improve on the 5 previous and the 5 before that, and the 5 before that, then I was going to have a really rock solid process. And as I mentioned right at the beginning, my printing background ensured that I had to have a rock solid process, because otherwise mistakes get made.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to add one of mine that I think, and that was just relative to, property management and BDN. And I've actually had someone say, this is a bad word, but for me, it wasn't. It was my driver. And that was my passion for actually working in the real estate industry and understanding why I got up every day and went to work early or stayed back, because I knew what I was working towards. I knew how I wanted to help people in real estate, and being really clear on our purpose and why we're doing it, I think is also holds us accountable, right? Because that's another thing I think a key trait of a high performing is you need to hold yourself accountable. If you're not getting results, well, are you actually doing the work? Like what you said, Matt, are you implementing? Are you doing the things today that is going to make yourself better or get you those results for tomorrow? But love the points that you touched on in terms of grit and determination. And I think like that comes down to like, how ambitious are you as well? Like, how clear are your goals? We can have goals, we can write them down, but then what do you do with them? Are you actually coming up with that process to reach your goals?
You got to pay that car off, don't you, Sarah?
Yeah, that's it. I just paid my car off.
Yes.
Yes. And I had a plan. It's like I knew how long I wanted to pay, how long it would take me. And I did it. And you just held myself accountable.
And I think that's very important. I think that holding yourself accountable is so important, and a lot of people don't. I've seen a lot of agents over the years, and I just don't understand how they could come in week after week after week to a sales meeting and say, listen, I don't have any prospects. I've got no prospects. I've got no prospects. And these people, they haven't done anything to try and grow that database. And you say to them, how many on your database? Oh, I'm not sure. And you go, well, if you're not sure on how many people, I can tell you on our database right now, there's 346 people, right? Much smaller database in what we do now, because we don't prospect. A buyer doesn't you don't warm them up over 2 or 10 years. It happens more fluid, but they're the people that we've dealt with and know in the business. And you've got to know those numbers, and if you don't, you're only accountable to yourself for that matter.
That's right. Well, I want to touch on in terms of our development, because I think that's also a key area that I have found, Matt, for other whether it's real estate agents, leaders, directors, or business development managers and property managers that are high performers in their sphere, because they keep investing in not just their professional development, but their personal development. So my question is, Matt, how important do you think your mindset is when it comes to being a high performing agent?
Oh, listen, your mindset is, I would put it at number 1, to be honest, because I always talk to people and I say, listen, if they're going through a bit of a form slump in real estate, you sit there and you say, right, okay, what's going on in your life right now? Are they going through a divorce? Have they got financial issues or concerns? Have they got perhaps, unfortunately, a sick child? Or is there things going on in the background? And 99.9% of the time, that's what's happening, right? And I had a coach early on. I took on a coach very, very early. And she used to say to me all the time, she used to say, listen, it sounds a bit harsh, but she used to say, listen, your dog dies, you're sad, but if you've got an appointment, you go into the appointment, you do the appointment, you come back out and you're sad again. And you've got to be able to compartmentalize that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can't do that. And I understand it. I'm not sitting here saying they're wrong because they can't, but I've always been very good at being able to put things in boxes and be able to say, right, this I'm on, I've got to be on, I've got to be switched on right now. And I think that is absolute key to high performance is your mindset and mental state. I mean, I've been up until recently, I'd never had any issues with any mental health or anything like that. And I did a couple of years back, and it humbles you. It gives you a lot more empathy. You have a lot more understanding for not just your clients, but people in your life as well, personally, on what they might be going through, and not telling you, because everybody's got something going on in their life. And I think there's a saying out there that says, something along those lines. And it's so true that, there's always something going on under the surface that you'll never probably know about. I've got a guy that I know now that is going through some real tough times, and I called him on the weekend and just left a message. I didn't expect him to pick up. He's not in that mind space at the moment. I've been there, and when you are in that headspace, you just don't want to talk to people. But I left the voicemail, and that was on Saturday. I got a message today saying thanks for that. I'm a bit down the dumps, but I really appreciate it. And I wouldn't have done that previously because I wouldn't have understood it, and I probably wouldn't have had the empathy to be able to do it. So I think that that's what I've brought into the new business I'm in, is that we are dealing with people similar to yourself. When you're dealing with a landlord, etc., you deal with them for quite some time. And with buyers, we deal with them right from the start of the journey all the way through to moving in, and post that as well, because we're not there to sell them anything else anymore, so they're comfortable to continue a conversation. So it's really, really important to be able to understand that. We had a client last year who had a child that's on the spectrum, and I've got some friends who has a son that is the same. So I have a bit more of an understanding than most. And I knew that, for example, with them, they needed to move out of their old home. We bought them a new home. They needed to move out of their old home into the new home so they could sell the other one, because the change and the people coming through and all that would have been too triggering for their son. And they were so appreciative of the understanding of that. But we managed to get a license agreement on the property that we bought so they could move in before they settled. And we pretty much had theirs sold before they settled. So it all sort of worked out perfectly. But I know that Matthew, starting 10 years ago, wouldn't have had the capacity to be able to see that and to see the need there and what I needed to do.
Yeah, I think having that emotional intelligence is so important in real estate, especially because we are dealing with so many people. Like, we are in the people industry, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and I've actually spoke on this, I think it was the last YouTube video, is that I still feel there's opportunities out there that agents aren't grasping, and that is to really try to understand the person that they are talking with, trying to build that relationship, and not be afraid to go deep, Matt. Like, rather than having just surface level conversations, do the small talk, understand what footy team they go for, understand if they had a shit weekend and why. Like, don't be afraid to ask those questions, because we also don't know if by asking those questions, you might be the person that can actually help them, or they might just need someone to talk to. I'm going to be quite vulnerable right now. It was actually a year ago that I had depression, and where I'm very mindful of what we put on social media and how generally we can just put all the fancy good things that happen, which I like to think I like to keep it real and raw.
Yeah.
And I haven't been afraid to expose my journey. So I actually did a post and was open and told people, like, this is what I'm dealing with right now. It wasn't a cry for help. It was just to be like, this is my network. These are the people who I know, and this is what I'm going through. And my life changed dramatically from that. And I've had a couple of aha moments, which and I have shared, where it has tested me. And I believe that it's in these moments that we have in life with challenges that we find that resilience and we really adapt that growth mindset, because there's always a lesson to learn from the challenges that happen in our life. And I'm a massive believer of that. Do you think the same, Matt?
100%. You hit on it before when you said, and I thought about it when you said it, that your ex sort of gave you a nudge to get into real estate. And a lot of people live with regret. A lot of people sit there and say, I wish I never did this. Wish I never met that person. I wish I never went into business with that person, whatever it may be. And I've had a lot of things happen to me over the journey and occur. And, a lot of people have said to me, do you regret making that move? Do you regret partnering with that person? Do you regret this? Do you regret that? And my answer is the same all the time. And I'm happy to share it here because the answer is the same all the time. And that is no, because every single decision that you make gets you to where you are right now. And as I mentioned earlier, there was a very dark time for me a couple of years ago. And I was thinking of leaving the whole industry. Like, I was going to open a bar, and that might not have been a good play either at the time. But I was going to open a bar. I was going to do something else. I was just going to get completely out of it. And again, my wife sat me down pretty much, and she said, "Listen, you've come too far. You've done too much. You need to tap into what you're good at and how you can help people." And so that's where the idea of going into advocacy began. But at that time, it was just an idea and a thought, but that small idea and that thought actually allowed me to focus on not what I was going through at the time, but focus on something else that, and I put it on your in the comments on what you posted over the weekend, just having little small wins along the way, and having a plan and having an idea of where you want to head to is the best thing to freeing your mind. And we can sit there and we can stay in the doldrums and we can stay in the dumps and what have you. And some people, don't get me wrong, some people find it really, really, really difficult because they're in a really, really bad space. I'm not going to say that I was at a point where I was thinking of really, really bad things, but I was still in a bad way. And a psychologist I was seeing at the time explained it the best. He said, "Don't ever feel guilty about how you're feeling compared to someone else's position, because you've all got the right to feel the way you feel." And I love that. So at the end of the day, at rock bottom, you've got a choice. You can stay at rock bottom, or you can pick up some pieces and start moving forward. And as I said, it wasn't overnight, and it was probably a 12-month process of building this business that I'm in now. But it gave me some hope. It gave me it revitalized my passion.
Yeah.
And it gave me somewhere to aim for. And I think that, that's where, at your lowest, that's where you find how strong you actually are.
Yeah. I think it was just the other day, Matt, we both commented on, someone put something up about what resilience means to us. And we both, liked each other's, because resilience to me was, even though like when I had my benign tumor and I had like a month of rehab and recovery, I was determined. It wasn't going to stop me doing the things I needed to do. And I think also in the industry and where our resilience comes from, you mentioned earlier, like you don't like no's, right? But it's from getting those no's, and especially if you're at the start of your real estate industry journey, it's from those no's where you're like, well, I don't want to keep getting all of these no's. What can I do to get better? You know, I'm determined, like going back to what we said about high performing age, I'm determined to get more yeses. Yeah. I'm determined to connect with more people, and nothing is going to stop me for doing the things that I love and want to do to help people. And that goes back to, you know, our purpose and why we do, you know, the things we do. And I think the biggest shift for me when I went from when I like, I feel like the high performing agent gets flown around a lot, but as a high performing BDM, I think the mindset was a pivotal point for me going, okay, if I'm good and I take care of me, I can take care of other people in the best way possible. And I can show up with that empathy and compassion. I can have these deep conversations. I can expand on my knowledge. I can upskill in all areas of my life. Because if we feel good as individuals, our whole environment around us feels good. Our energy becomes contagious. People want to know us. People want to work with us. So I think it's so important, the things that we touched on. So number one, mindset, high performing agents. That's what we've discovered today.
Yeah, well, if nothing else, 100%. If you know, it's like anything. You know, those people, then when they walk into a room, they light up the room. You know, they don't do that on purpose, but I can tell you now that they take really, really good care of their mindset. Because if they didn't, they'd walk in with a frown. They'd walk in, you know, cross and upset. So you know, it's one of those things. You meet those people and go, they're always happy, they're always positive. And that's why I loved Ted Lasso. You know, it's one of the best shows. I keep trying to convince my wife to watch it.
She's got to watch it.
I know. But you know, his mindset is just phenomenal. And I understand it's a character and everything else, but you know, there's so much to take and so much to learn from that. And that's what I'm saying, that you know, there's so many real estate courses, there's so many property management courses, there's so many things that you can do, but there's also so many things outside the space that you should be considering and doing. Because as I said, if you're not fit, if you're not healthy, you know, as you know, especially if you don't have your health, you've got nothing. Like, you know, it's as simple as that. And you know, you can be the best real estate agent in the world, but if you've, you know, and I've been in that position before, I've let myself, you know, put on weight and get unhealthy and all that sort of thing, and I've had to, and it's a lot harder to get off than it is to put on, and a lot less fun as well. But you know, you've got to keep focus on all those things, and if you can have a really good balance, you know, it's really, really. I know, for example, myself, I've got to get more sleep at the moment. I've got to get myself out of the habit of staying up watching, you know, TV, Ted Lasso, till, you know, too late at night. So I've got to. That's my goal for this year, is to get back into a really good sleeping pattern as well, so I can get up earlier and I can train and I can do all those things.
Yeah, and I think that's just you know, having some boundaries. Like when I look back and go, you know, I didn't mind working long days, Matt, because that's what I love to do. Like I loved my, and I still love my job, and I'm flexible with my hours. I'm very lucky now. But going back, I wouldn't change that. But I still made sure I invested time to look after and nurture myself. And that's also setting some healthy boundaries so that we do go to bed on time, or, you know, we're not working until 12 p.m. at night. And also to still do those things that outside of work that we love and fills our cup, right? Makes us feel good. So I want to, for our listeners today looking to excel, whether that's they're in property management or business development or sales, what immediate steps do you recommend for them if they aspire to be a high performing agent?
Well, the definition of madness is continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Yeah. So you've got to be really, really honest with yourself to begin with. And if you had a really good year last year and you made the money you wanted to make, and you made the connections you wanted to connect with and all those sort of things, that's great. do what you did last year and do that again. Rinse and repeat. It's that simple. But if you didn't get what you wanted, and let's face it, 80% of our industry, doesn't get where they want to get every year. 20% make 80% of the money, and 80% make the other 20%. They've got to share it amongst themselves. So let's be honest with that. So if that's the case, you've got to have a plan. You've got to commit to that plan, and you have got to stick to it even when it's really, really hard. The things you do in the next 30 days will pay off in the next 90 to 120 days, right? So you've got 4 to 5 to 6 months before you're actually going to see result. And I think the unfortunate thing for, we mentioned earlier, the younger people coming through the industry now is that they have been brought up in, if I want it, I can get it immediately, right now.
Yeah.
Like I use an adage all the time about movies. I say, listen, back in my day, I don't want to do the back in my day, but you do from time to time. Mm-hmm. If I wanted a movie, I had to hop on my bike, ride down the main street, hope that the video shop actually had that and that they weren't all rented out. Grab the video, give it to the guy, pay for it, ride back, put it into the video, and then grab the remote that was a cord that plugged into the video that came across the lounge room floor, because I didn't have the wireless remotes then, and watch the movie, right? So there was this process that needed to go into play. Now, whatever movie you can think of, you can have in a second. And that's where I think it's really, really sad for this generation, because they're not used to being patient and waiting. Yeah. And I think that, as I said, what you do in the next 30 days will come to fruition in the next 60, 90, 120. So you've got to give any plan, I reckon, a minimum of 6 months before you can sit there and say, no, sorry, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what too many agents do is they come in, they have a plan, I'm going to drop DLs for the next month, right? Whether I agree with DLs or not doesn't matter. That's it's completely other topic. But I'm going to do it for the next month. They do it for the next month. They don't get a lead. They don't get a phone in. They don't get anything. And they throw it away and say, no, not going to do it. I've had people that has come up with a file when I've gone to list their home of every DL and every newsletter and everything else I've ever put in their letterbox. They've kept every single thing. So if I had given up, then someone else would have come along and taken over my file. Yeah. And I wouldn't have been called in.
That had grit and determination.
Yeah, exactly. But to make your plan very early on, and we're in January right now, so it's a really good time to sit down and go, right, what am I going to do? You need to be, I agree, you need to be in people's letterboxes. You need to be in their inboxes, in their text messages on their phone. You need to be on their in their inbox on their email. And you need to be talking to them over the phone as well. Yeah. If you call them every second day for the next 6 weeks, they're going to get sick of you pretty quickly. So you've got to stagger it and make it look seamless, as if, oh yeah, okay. Because like we do it all the time at the moment on social media. You look at something, you go away, it follows you around. It may give you a rest for a week or two, and then it comes back and it follows you again, and you go, I'm just going to order it, right? And that's what people are in life, because in the sales process, in the renting process, all those sort of things, you've got to catch someone right at the very moment they're ready to do that. A dog harness, well, guess what? We're probably going to buy a dog harness probably 30 times over the life of a dog, because they need a new, fresh one all the time. But we're not going to buy a house every couple of weeks or every month or every quarter. So you've got to put that plan in place. You've got to see it through, and you've got to commit to it. And then you get to the other end. And Josh Vegan used to teach a thing as well. What happened really, really, what do we do really, really well? What do we need improvement on? What do we need to get rid of? And what do we need to add? And that's what we should be doing at the end of every single year, and saying, right, that plan that I had in place, what went really, really well? What didn't do very well, and perhaps we need to either change or get rid of, and we can just focus and just continually tweak that plan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm a massive advocate on, having a mentor, having a coach. We don't have to do these things alone. Like,
No.
I just committed to my new coach for this year. Obviously, Matt, you're a coach. I do my mentoring, and I believe that we've got people that can support us and help us when it comes to reviewing these things,
Yeah.
asking the right questions so that they can actually put it into place and implement and go, oh, actually, I didn't think about that, okay, that isn't working. What can I do? Yeah. Or, help with the actual business planning side if they've never done it before.
Yeah.
So don't think that you have to do this alone. There are people out there that can support you and help you adapt the things that you want to do as well. I think massive.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just like you and I have followed each other for a long time on social media. We finally connected face to face last year, and that's been sort of a relationship that's been born out of that. And but what I can say is that I knew that if I rang you at any time to ask you anything about property management or BDM, I knew you'd be back to me and you'd be giving me the answers, right? And you just got to hang out with really good people. And if you hang out with really good humans, then they're going to help you and they're going to work with you. Andy Reid, for example, great man.
Great
And
man,
yeah,
Andy.
he is. And the reason I mention him is that when I was going through what I was going through, so many people said to me a year or 6 months or a year later, said, oh, I really wanted to reach out and just see how you were. I was thinking of you, but I just didn't know what to say. Well, Andy rang and he said, mate, I don't know what to say,
Yeah.
but I'm just ringing to say, I hope you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the first people I caught up with afterwards. And, and that's what I'm saying, that this industry, there is a minority that, brings it into disrepute at times and makes you shake your head like you were shaking it on the weekend.
Yeah.
But the majority are there to help one another, and the majority will do it, for a cup of coffee or a lunch or whatever. And I always talk about this to people. I say, listen, I love the saying progress over perfect, because nothing's ever going to be perfect.
Yeah.
There's not a perfect human. There's not a perfect anything, right? So, if you just make progress, small bits of progress. My newsletter, as I said, started, it looked very, very shoddy when you look back at it 6 years or 10 years or 15 years later. It's like your business cards and stuff over the years as well. But it was there, it was out. And
you did it.
Yeah, you did it. And that's what I would say to anybody watching this, is that you got to have the plan, you got to commit to it, and you got to just stick to it and see it through.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Matt, I'm going to leave it on that note. Thank you so much for joining me today. There's so much value, and I really hope the listeners, see that value. For anyone who would like to get in touch with Matt, I will pop his details below in the content section. Matt, I think that you're amazing, and I'm so glad that the social media world, connected us, but I'm also glad that we took the initiative and caught up in person. That's resulted in a fruitful relationship. So thank you again for joining.
100%. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. And Sarah Sincotta style, everyone. Keep rising.